Shabbat Shalom, my friends. The following people have been added this week to the horrifying list of those killed in mass murders through gun violence this year. 64-year-old Catherine Goldstein, 35-year-old Irina McCarthy, 37-year-old Kevin McCarthy, 63-year-old Jacqueline Sondheim, 88-year-old Stephen Strauss, 78-year-old Nicholas Toledo Zaragoza, 69-year-old Eduardo Uvaldo. Pious words fill the air. Flags are flying at half-mast, and that social and communal and national malignancy which defines our nation's puny approach to rational and reasonable gun control steadily metastasizes. The dead continue to pile up as we offer our prayers and fly our flags. So I ask, why should we expect not to harvest what we have sown? Is America so exceptional that it can escape history? Is it really? Okay, let's get to our text. Our Sedra is CHUKAT, beginning with Numbers 19, verse 1. We'd really like to take a deep breath now after looking straight at the reality of an America that not only is violence-prone, but is intentionally enabled in its love for violence by those who feel joy in allowing the distribution of powerful weapons to our civilian population. We'd like to escape it, but CHUKAT, our Sedra, is all about death. I guess that taking a deep breath is just going to have to wait a bit. Our text here makes clear, even as we have learned elsewhere, that death is one of the primary sources of tumah, of impurity. Death is overwhelmingly powerful. Death is so absolute in being the representation of all that love is not. Death irreversible. Death unstoppable in the manner in which it shuts down any being that possesses life. That its very presence, the presence of death, is seen as absolutely contaminating. How do those of us who are still living escape the contamination which comes to us wittingly or unwittingly by proximity to the dead? Our Sedra outlines the Parah Adumah, the Red Heifer, through whose ashes, accompanied by the appropriate rituals, we can be cleansed. The use of the Red Heifer is a CHUKAT, a Torah statute that we never would have adopted had it not been dictated by the Torah itself. The ritual outlined in the Torah is complicated, and how it works, absolutely confounding. But we're not done with death, not quite yet. Following the Parah Adumah in a single verse lacking any particular context, and certainly bereft of any mourning details, Miriam, the sister of Moses and Aaron, dies. Long associated with availability of water during the wilderness wandering, Miriam's death precipitates panic among the people. In the 38th year of the wilderness wandering, the people still feared that God would leave them to death by dehydration. Moses, already old and increasingly feeble, impatiently disobeys God and strikes out at a rock. Abundant water flows, but now Moses will not be allowed to enter the promised land. Next, Aaron, Moses' brother, his life comes to an end. The text says that once again, death will be the punishment for what Moses did by hitting the rock. Aaron's role as Kohen Gadol is transferred to his son Eleazar, and then Aaron dies. This time, at least, unlike with Miriam, the text records that the people mourned for Aaron 30 days. Our stubborn, recalcitrant, unappreciative ancestors lacking in any historical memory, ancestors for whom gratitude comes and goes with each morning breeze, revolt against the aged and now doubly grieving Moses. Not enough food, not enough water, too many enemies gathering to attack, and so again death returns. God sends fiery serpents into the midst of the people, and many are bitten and die. And when the people cry out for what is it, the 1,000th time, for relief, our text has God telling Moses, make a figure in the shape of a serpent and mount it on a standard. And anyone who was bitten, who then looks at it, shall recover. To this day, I've seen it, on a hilltop overlooking the Jordan River, on the Jordanian side of the river, is a tall rod with the image of a serpent mounted on it. A staff with two intertwined serpents is the symbol of Hermes or Mercury. Aesculapius, the god of medicine, is portrayed as holding a staff with a single serpent wrapped around it. But what's it doing here in the biblical account of the Exodus? It seems, my friends, that there was some form of a snake cult throughout the Mediterranean world, and the Israelites were not exempt, not immune. We found the snake in the Garden of Eden. We find it here, and we will find it again in 2 Kings chapter 18, where the Jewish king Hezekiah, a good guy, was described as shattering the bronze serpent made here by Moses and preserved by the Jewish people in the Holy of Holies. The text says, and Bnei Yisrael burned incense before this bronze snake. Hezekiah was destroying an image of a snake that the Israelites had been worshiping from the time of Moses. So much for the thought that the Israelites became pure monotheists immediately at the foot of Mount Sinai. First, how to deal with the impurities brought about by proximity with the dead, the red heifer. Then the death of Miriam. Then the death of Aaron. Then the proclamation that Moses will soon die. Then the deaths caused by the bites of poisonous snakes. I think that I can understand with a bit more clarity now why the rules regarding the red heifer are embedded in the Sedra. And I think that I understand with a bit more clarity now why the story of a bronze serpent, a healing serpent, is found here. The English philosopher Thomas Hobbes wrote some, 500 years ago, that life could be, and I quote, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Hobbes felt that a sound government could make life easier. But close to 3,000 years ago, our people were confronting a very similar problem, dealing with the value of life. So they taught us, avoid proximity to death as much as possible. They taught us how to cleanse the contamination of death from our ordinary lives. They taught us how to medically treat some diseases, eventually coming to see God as the source of all healing. And they even tolerated serpent on a staff, some rather unusual ways to lift up our spirits and give us hope. Thus, the healing of our bodies and the healing of our spirits. Death is real, and as omnipresent as ever. Denying death, no solution. Bronze serpents, have to tell you, they don't work. But our people has learned to fill each day, each of our days, with meaning and with purpose, with companionship and with love, with hope and with faith. And all of that just might be enough to help us through the day and to a good and loving and purposeful and meaningful life. Shabbat Shalom. Okay, now if you were waiting to take a deep breath, you can take your deep breath now. Have a wonderful week.